What is up, everybody? Welcome. This is Office Hours. I'm here to answer your questions, and we're going to be hopefully fielding questions from last week's class. I guess not technically last week, but the actual class we taught this month. We went over Belief 21, and I thought we went over more than one belief. Did we really only do one belief? So that was build your life in a way that maximizes your fulfillment. So we covered the idea of eudaimonia, which is incredibly important, human flourishing. We went over the recipe for human flourishing, which hopefully you guys are putting to use. It's something that I think a lot about now. I feel like the world is struggling with this one. Everybody, certainly myself as a kid, wanted things to be easy, but the problem is that violates eudaimonia. The physics of being human dictate that your brain is going to kick things up into your conscious mind. And one of those is a feeling of emptiness that you get when you're not working for the things that you have. So unfortunately, things being difficult is a fundamental pillar of the human experience. And that without that, there really will feel like there's something missing. We went over the big 5 drives that people have: autonomy, mastery, relative positioning, purpose, and meaning. And then we covered the 5 tiers of Maslow's hierarchy. All right. Without further ado, again, welcome, and let's get into them thar questions and see what we can do. Rumors that we can dispel, depth to the human experience that we can add, and get you guys thinking in a way that is going to help you achieve eudaimonia, to get you to the point where you have a deep level of human flourishing. As you guys know, my obsession is all about the neurochemistry. So the punchline of life is not success. It is not fame. It is not accolades. It is one thing and one thing only: how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And if you're struggling well, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you're going to feel good about who you are and what you're doing. And if you are struggling poorly or failing to struggle, then you're going to have that sense that there's something wrong, that there's something missing. And that goes to a really dark place really, really fast. So what may I assist with? All right. From an anonymous Facebook user: what happens when standards conflict with integrity? I said I'd have book 3 published this year, but my narration team for the audiobook has dropped the project, and the extra time it will take me to tackle it myself will mean missing my deadline. Intellectually, I understand that the goal is to release the best product possible, but I still feel like I'm breaking my word to myself. I said I would do something, and it isn't looking like I will be doing it. My self-worth is tied to my ... I can't see anymore. I don't know if that is an important part, Amy, but if it is, we will somehow have to find a way to get that on screen. For now, I will assume that I have the majority of what I need. All right. So I love that you're pushing yourself. I love that you have a standard. I love that there is a goal that you set for yourself and you really went all out for it. But this is where we want to make sure that we don't pathologize the rules, the values, the beliefs that we have in our life, our own identity, because any of this stuff, when it's taken to too far of an extreme level, it in and of itself becomes pathological. So I'll give you an example. When I was trying to get really, really lean, I realized in that process that I would make an extraordinarily good anorexic because I have this insane level of discipline. And once I say I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do it. Now, at the point where that begins to be deleterious to your health, where you're no longer enjoying your own life, you've now got a problem. And so I had to realize that while discipline is amazing, that when it's carried to a level where it becomes pathological, where it becomes body dysmorphia, where it becomes, in that case, anorexia, that is just a bad path to pursue. Now, fortunately, I don't find myself, I didn't have a hard time saying, hey, Lisa, you're going to be in control of this. I can recognize the danger even before I'm in it. So the second you think that I'm taking this too far and that it's damaging areas, beyond its damaging areas, in that it's no longer just a high functioning example of discipline and spilling over into something else, I will instantly quit and I will let you be the judge of that. And so that's exactly what she did. And when my quest to get lean took me to the point where I had no personality, my wife said, you no longer have a personality. And I stopped and just said, cool, then I'm going to go back to eating in a new way, but I'm going to balance things out. And that was me recognizing that even something as powerful as discipline can be carried to the point where it becomes pathological. And so You want to recognize that here. Now, the art is understanding, are you just letting yourself off the hook of a goal that you really should be pushing for? Or are you recognizing the edge of when something becomes pathological? So you also want to weigh your values. What's more important to you? Getting it out in the time frame that you said you were going to get it out in, or making sure that the book hits a certain level of quality. You know that you're never going to be able to get the book to perfect. And so I will caution people against that. That is certainly something that I have to do here at Impact Theory as we create the fiction side of our business. And I'm writing stories, coming up with ideas that I'm farming out to other writers. And the temptation is to just, make them better, make them better, make them better, make them better, especially when you're talking about writing where you're sort of laying yourself bare. There's nowhere to hide. And you know that there's this chance that you're going to have poured your heart and soul into something, you put it out into the world and it gets rejected. And so you can end up in a death loop of like, hey, if I'm going to be that naked, if I'm going to put myself at risk like that, I want to make sure that this is as good as it can be. But you've got the idea put forth by Steve Jobs that real artists ship. And this is something that Seth Godin touches on in his new book, The Practice. And I think it's really, really important. So you're going to need to decide where in your value system that lies. And no one can answer that for you. You're struggling with the right thing, which is, I want to make this good. Some new obstacle has entered my way that may have reverberations through the timeline of all this. I want to make sure that I go extra hard to still meet the timeline. But if I find that even pouring all of my heart and soul into this, I'm going to miss the deadline, you have to judge whether you really gave it your all or not. Personally, because I am prone to leaving it all out on the field at all times, and the very few moments where I don't, I'm honest with myself about the fact that I didn't. It's pretty easy for me to go, okay, cool. I'm going to keep going and going and going as hard as I can. But I know that I'm willing to push that deadline by a little bit if that's what I need to do to make something better within the confines of knowing that real artists ship. Isabella, welcome to the party.
Hey, Tom, how are you? Thank you so much.
I'm doing very well. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. Hey, I saw you at Thrive yesterday. You were absolutely amazing.
Oh, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I just have a quick question. I was going through, I recently signed up to the Mindset University. I was going through the modules, and my biggest question right now lies in how do you work through self-doubt in your business? And also, I know you mentioned to like adapt the anti-fragile identity of the learners. So like, I was wondering if you could go a little bit more into depth into that, please.
Yeah, the big thing here is and I talked about this at Thrive yesterday. I want people to embrace the notion of being average. Okay. So the part of the death spiral of self-doubt is feeling like whoever I am, and I can never improve upon that. And so this is now a test, and life is a test of essentially what I was born with, or maybe the more insidious version, life is a test of all the things that I was able to learn as a kid. Because most people will believe that they can learn as a kid, that they can grow and adapt and gain new skills, but they have sort of this rough idea that at some point, maybe in their late teens or early 20s, they became who they're going to be. And now they are this complete entity, and life is about figuring out how far you can push those skills. I want to break people of that notion, because that's what's going to hold them back, because this creates this anxiety around, well, was I able to become good enough in that period? Whether it was being born, did I win the genetic lottery? Did my parents give me the things that I needed to have? Or did I work hard enough as a kid? Like all the people like myself who lament not taking a piano as a kid so that they could have it now. And reminding myself, I can learn piano today. Like if I was serious about it and I really cared, then I could get good. So allowing myself to believe I am average. Now, the reason that lets you off the hook is I don't need to be extraordinary today to go on to do something extraordinary. I simply need to embrace the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters, which to me is completely aligned with the physics of being a human. So physics meaning there's nothing below it. This is the truth. This is a statement of mathematical fact about what it means to be a human. Humans are designed to respond to their environment with actual change, which will shorthand to growth. So you come into your environment is a certain way, and now the brain, the body goes, okay, cool, I can rewire to this. Now you can control your environment by pushing yourself to get better at something. So if you want to get better at business, whatever element of that business that you need to get good at, then you go down the path of gaining mastery in that element. So when I am hit with self-doubt, which I am hit with self-doubt all the time, because it's the physics of being human. There's a negative voice in all of our heads. That negative voice, unless we're sociopaths, that negative voice is coughing up all the reasons why we probably shouldn't do this, all the reasons that puts us in a dangerous situation, that we should retreat and be safe. Okay, so I know my brain is going to do that. And the way that I deal with that is to remind myself, I'm only average, but I'm an average human. And the only belief that matters says if I put energy and effort into getting better at something, I will actually get better. So if I say, ooh, I'm not sure I'm good enough at this element of business to pull this off, or I'm just not good enough in business in general in order to build a successful company, I say, that's true. Like, you really aren't good enough at that thing right now. So there's only one question. Do you care enough about it to go and get good? And if you do care enough about it to go and get good, then go and get good and go down that path and know that it is not only okay to make mistakes, it's critical, because mistakes are the most information-rich data stream you will ever encounter. So the very thing that you're afraid of, I'm not good enough. Well, why is that bad? Because then I will make mistakes. Well, why is that bad? Because then I will embarrass myself. Okay, well, let's walk all the way up to, hey, you just embarrassed yourself. Was it real? Yes, it was. You really are embarrassed. This really does suck. The neurochemistry of embarrassing yourself is horrendous. It is not enjoyable in any way, shape, or form. And it is real. And people really are talking about you. And they really are whispering about you. And you really did make a fool of yourself. Now what? And that's the moment I want people to live in. And the now what is, go over here, focus on a long timeline. Don't judge yourself through the lens of a moment. Judge yourself through the lens of a lifetime. When you start thinking of yourself, not in any one moment, can I look cool, or did I embarrass myself? But instead say, I'm only going to think in 3-year increments or 5-year increments, or if you're really like hardcore about this, 10-year increments. Because when you look back on your life in a 3-year increment, you might be like, yeah, I did embarrass myself quite a few times in there, but through those mistakes, because I didn't shut down emotionally as other people were judging me, and I focused on the long term of how much I could learn by being willing to make these mistakes over and over and over for 3 years, I now have a skill set that they don't have, because they spent all their time judging themselves, judging other people, wasting all these cycles, thinking like that. And I spent all my time saying, hey, I have adopted the identity of the learner. I'm not going to spiral out of control emotionally because I failed or because I embarrassed myself. I know that these skills stack up. And so the more time and energy that I put into getting good, I actually get better. And then we spill over into one of my favorite quotes from Kobe Bryant: boos don't block dunks. So all the people making fun of you for having failed, ultimately it doesn't matter. If you can outperform them, you're going to win. And so the name of the game becomes to get so good that you can just perform better at things that matter to you than other people. So they can say what they want, they can think what they want when you slip up, when you fail, when you embarrass yourself, but through that process you gain skills and you can outperform.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Man, live by that shit. I'm telling you right now, like that interwoven tapestry of the way to set up your life, to think about the human acquisition of skill set, to think about embarrassment, failure, all of that stuff. When you get how all of that stuff connects together, nothing can stop you, because you're acquiring skills that let you dunk on people. And I don't mean dunk on people in a Twitter way. I mean in the Kobe Bryant way of, you've just gotten so good at something that matters to you that people actually can't stop you, because you're that good at accomplishing that thing. Neria Zidane. It's a cool name. I'm sure I'm messing it up, but it's cool. Even in mispronunciation, it's cool. All right, super quick question for Tom. I love the fact that you invested a lot of time studying the brain and how it works. Are there any specific resources you would recommend to check out? Yes. So first of all, V.S. Ramachandran. I would start there. That man taught me more about the brain than just about anybody else. The second person that taught me about the brain is David Eagleman. He is absolutely amazing. If you start with those two, you're going to go a long way to beginning to understand how the mind works. And then another person it's more on a behavioral side than it is on the actual neuroscience. But if you're reading the neuroscience and then the behavioral stuff, you're really going to start to put some pieces together. Is a man named Dan Ariely, and he's got Predictably Irrational is the first book. And then there's a follow-on to that I'm blanking on right now. But he's got a 1-2 punch. And I think he's probably written more since then, but I haven't read those. But Dan Ariely, look up that. Predictably Irrational would be a great place to start. All right, Kevin, in the house.
Hey, Tom.
What's
first,
up?
I'd like to say thank you, man, for everything you do. It's been a life-changing experience with ITU, and everyone in the community is amazing. Can you hear me all right?
I can perfectly, and thank you for the kind words.
So my question is, how does one contend with their real limitations, both physical and neurological, but not give them the power to interfere with reaching for your goals? And like, there's sort of a duality there where you can't deny that they exist, but you can't give them power either. How do you contend with that?
I love that you're bringing up that. So all of us are, we're a combination of things that we're good at and things that we suck at. So we all have, areas where we're strong, areas where we're weak, and accepting that can be helpful. It ties that notion of, hey, I'm hopelessly average. So I'm good at some stuff, I'm weak at other things, and so be it. It's really about not letting yourself dwell on that. So for instance, I get a lot of credit for having a good memory, but the reality is I remember some freakishly small amount of what I encounter, but I've learned a technique that I call reading in swarms that have helped me to hold on to. So the 10% that I do learn, I hold on to it pretty ferociously. So I read about something rather than reading one book and trying to remember everything, which my brain has shown me that I don't get disproportionate rewards out of doing that. So I'll remember some things, but it won't be a lot. So I'll read in a swarm. And the reason that I'll read several books on one topic. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm looking for things that I have like a real emotional response to, because I'm more likely to remember that. The reason that I need to hear it a few times before I have the emotional response is the first time I hear it, maybe I was spacing out, I wasn't quite paying attention, or I didn't understand the terminology, or it's like I don't understand how it connects to something else, so I don't have a way to anchor it in my life. But by the third time I hear the same idea, I'm like, oh man, wait a second, that's really starting to hit me. Like at first the emotional response was very subtle, and then it was a little bit bigger. And then I found like between books 2 and 3, I was like thinking about that topic one time. I was just sort of spacing out. There's something about that one that's sticking with me. Now by the third time, I might go, hey, there's really something here. Either I want to put it to use in my life, or I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. So I've learned that technique to say, okay, I'm weak in this area, but by putting this technique on it, I'm able to start retaining, even though I'm frustrated that I don't remember the 90%, and I could dwell on that. Or I can say, hey, I've actually got this method for making this 10% real in my life. And so another thing that really solidifies it is using it immediately. So, hey, this thing has started to hit me emotionally. Now I need to put it to use, and that's going to help me retain it. Now, there are things in all of our lives where we could just get really mad. Like I could spiral into just madness over the fact that I'm not smart in the way that Elon Musk is smart, and really lost a lot of my youth to the notion of, oh God, I mispronounce this all the time, and somebody gave me the correction. Now I can't remember which is true. Salieri. I think it's Salieri. Exactly. So real guy, right, grows up or is playing a piano at the same time that Mozart is playing, and he has this realization. He laments to God, and he says, God, why did you make me so good at piano that I can see how much better Mozart is? Like, I could have been an idiot, that would have been fine. But being just good enough to recognize that I'll never be as good as him becomes a saying that haunts him, and he wants to see Mozart fail, because he doesn't believe that he can build the tallest building. He thinks the only way to have the tallest building is to tear somebody else's down, right? So
he's
that
I spent on his limitations.
Exactly. And I spent a lot of time there, and it feels horrible. And it's exactly why people say that comparison is the thief of joy. Now, I will say it's less the comparison and more how you think about yourself in relative positioning, right? So we talked about that during the class. We all have this push to rise in our relative positioning. So we all want to be able to outperform somebody else. So what I have done to mitigate some of that is I just don't allow myself to spend time there. So I like the competitive aspect of saying, hey, like this person is good, but I don't allow that to diminish my sense of self. I force myself, and it is me forcing myself to be excited that that level of greatness exists. And so I may never be the greatest of all time, but I lavish myself with praise for being willing to pursue becoming the greatest of all time. So take interviewing. Interviewing is something that matters to me. It matters to my business, but I can look objectively and say, as of today, Joe Rogan is better than I am. Now I can go, okay, I can be angry that Joe Rogan is better than I am, or I can say, is there something that I can learn? I can also be inspired that he exists. And I can say, I'm going to beat the motherfucker. Like, I'm just going to keep going. Now, deep down inside, even though I really am showing up every day to play, to be bigger than him, to be more effective than him, to get people on the show that would rather be on my show than be on his show, but I am so in awe of where he's gotten and how he's pushing himself. And I recognize I may never beat him, but what I value myself for is just really showing up to play that hard. But like the weird nuance of investing in both, like, I love that there's somebody that much better than me. I love the opportunity to try to beat him. I love pouring myself into really working hard to improve so much that I can outperform him. And at the same time, not valuing myself for actually pulling it off, but valuing myself for showing up in the gym every day, putting in the work, putting in the cycles, not hiding from my limitations, right? Recognizing what they are, really, really working to find out, like, what is it that makes me worse at this thing? Like, how do I shore that up or go in a different direction or do something different so that I can maximize the areas where I want to get strong, right? There might be certain areas that I'm more interested in than others. And then going back to the initial thing of your duality of there's just some things that I'm not good at. So is it that he's leveraging a thing that I really fucking struggle with, and that's what he's doing? And so I'm going to have to, take a different path and do something in a different way. Because the goal, of course, is not to be a discount Joe Rogan. The goal is to be me, but in a way that resonates in a bigger and better way so that I can outperform by whatever metrics I decide to care about, right? Guests that will agree to come on the show, the number of people that watch the show, the depth of the impact that people have from the show, like, the things that matter to me. But that thin, like this weird little moment of nuance of saying that you value yourself for going all out for a goal that you may never be able to achieve. And this is something that Elon Musk talks really powerfully about. And he said, look, when I started Tesla, when I started SpaceX, the most obvious outcome was failure. And I still think that these might fail, but they're important enough. And I'll caveat that ever so slightly and say they're important enough to me, right? When I think about my own goals, they're important enough to me that I'm still going to go for it. And when people get wrapped up in it's only a win if I actually get the championship ring, then you devolve into madness. And the analogy that I try to get people to focus on is I think a healthier value system would be that you would rather have been the starring player in a team that played and lost in the championship game than to be a bench warmer on the team that won the championship. You got your ring, but is that really very interesting? So to me, I would say becoming capable of a championship performance, the pursuit of that is far more interesting than actually winning a championship.
So to summarize, it would kind of be accept your weaknesses or limitations, but don't dwell on them. Praise the process. Do not give up. Like, no matter how significant the odds of failure might be, if you truly believe in it, go for it.
I'm going to change one word. I'm going to change accept to acknowledge. So I don't accept my weaknesses. I am always looking for ways to improve upon them, but I acknowledge them in their current state. So this thing is harder for me. Do I want to go in and try to solve the foundational problem? Or do I want to work around it? And so I'm constantly asking myself that question. So for instance, I'm an extraordinarily slow writer. Now, if you look at somebody like Stephen King, if I had Stephen King's ability to write that fast, then I might not be pursuing the strategy that I'm pursuing now. So right now, the strategy that I pursue on the creative side of impact theory is I create the worlds, the stories, the characters, but then I hand them to a writer and I say, now you go actually create the narrative in this world. And the reason that I create that bubble is, one, it's fun. And obviously I want my life to be enjoyable. And then two, the creating stories that empower is what matters and is exactly why I'm doing it. And I don't trust other writers to have a deep enough philosophical understanding of these ideas to bake that in well enough. So I feel that sort of do the thing that only you can do. Like only I can create those stories in that way. But I recognize that it's an unknown quantity. If I tried to go become a faster writer, whether or not I would get enough return on that time investment to be worth it. So better for me, I think right now, given my assessment of the situation, far better for me to work with other writers who are faster, or at a minimum are slow like me, but I can get 10 or 20 of them working at the same time, so that in the time that I would get one story, I now have 20 stories. So I bristle at the word accept. But I do think your initial breakdown of the dichotomy of needing to acknowledge or not being afraid to acknowledge your weaknesses is very powerful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. All right. Facebook user. When you don't have exact clarity about what main goal you should work on, should you work on things that seem somewhat intuitively close until you get clear, or should you pause and take time to find clarity? That is an amazing question. So the answer is the second part. You want to just stumble ahead. Oh God, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do, but I'm going to engage. God bless Marie Forleo for giving me I forget the exact quote, but the concept was so powerful and it rang true so immediately, which is you're never going to think your way to clarity. You have to engage your way to clarity. You're going to go out and do something. And she tells this amazing story about how she was wondering, should I pursue dance? You know, I'm in my 20s. Most dancers start when they're like 9. And, you know, can I really do anything meaningful starting this late? And she said she spent like a year or 2 years lamenting, trying to think about it. And then she said she went and took a dance class. And she was like, in the first 7 minutes of that dance class, I had figured out more than I had in years of contemplation leading up to it. Man, this is the subconscious at work. Your subconscious can process data faster and vaster. So it can take a much vaster amount of data and it can process it much faster than your conscious mind. The only catch is it will speak to you in emotion. So you go into that dance class and 7 minutes in, you're like, oh my God, I love this so much. Or I hate everything about this. And now you know which path you should be going down. You get a lot more clarity. And I cannot tell you, I told my team, look, I'm going to give you clarity. I'm going to give you certainty because I know how powerful that is. And people will follow somebody that has clarity and certainty. But let me promise you one thing. I'm going to be constantly looking for ways to improve the way in which we are approaching the world, the way in which we are approaching trying to build the next Disney. I am changing on an almost daily basis, but I am constantly running ahead, engaging with ideas. Go. That is so powerful. I remember when I first discovered manga, I legitimately, within like 6 weeks, I was on a plane to Japan. I was like, these guys are doing something that we are not understanding here in the West. I need to get on a plane. Now, what the hell was I going to do? I had no idea. But I got on the plane. I went. I began to discover, began to engage. I come back. I get on another plane. Again, it was something like 6 or 8 weeks later. I go back to Japan. I'm trying to meet with people. I'm meeting with creatives, hiring translators, like just trying to meet with anybody and everybody, because I know the more I engage with this, the more I ask people questions, the more you begin to understand like what's really going on. But you're never going to be able to think your way to that. You're not even going to be able to read your way to that. The best way is to just get in there, but you have to be willing to change your mind. And that is something that a lot of people struggle with, because you need to come up with, now I'm really going to confuse you. You need to come up with your best hypothesis on what the way forward is, and then say it like it is gospel truth, and then run 1,000 miles an hour in that direction. But secretly know that you're probably wrong. You're almost certainly wrong. And you will look for that disconfirming evidence, and you will be willing to shift directions and be willing to do that over and over and over and over and over. And as long as you have a North Star and a willingness to say, either actually, I'm going to have to shape my North Star into something different, or this path isn't working at all, and constantly discard those paths until you find one that is more effective. Most people struggle. Either because that North Star that they put there actually doesn't feel like North Star, and it feels like, oh, this should be more important, I should love this more, and don't realize that they have to engage with it, or they really are super excited about this thing. They're telling people exactly how they're going to get there. They start engaging with it and they realize, ooh, there's something wrong, but they've put themselves so far out there. They've gotten out over their skis, as people will say, and now they feel embarrassed to have to backtrack. Either one of those two things is a trap. You have to have strong convictions loosely held. I don't remember where I first heard those words, but they are powerful. Use them. Strong convictions loosely held. Sarah.
Hi, Tom.
Hello.
So in the 5-day challenge, day 3 was how are the skills that you're building will help others? And then day 4, the question was, how is the skill that you're building will help reinforce your meaning and purpose? And I literally took a whole day like to answer that. And I'm like, oh my God, like it feels like it's the same question, because it feels like the only reason I'm gaining these skills is to be able to help others. And by answering that question, I already answered, but it's unclear. So how can I get more specific? How can I get better answer if there is a better way to think about it?
No, I think you're thinking about it in the right way. So the only caveat that I will add is that you don't want to be living only for other people. This is what I'll call the mother syndrome, where you have a woman, she has children, and now the amount of meaning and purpose in her life is so clear. She would do anything for those kids. She would die for those kids. And you find this a lot, where suddenly then your life becomes only your children's life. And so I tell people, you want to be doing something that not only serves yourself, but serves other people. But the idea is it should also serve yourself. Like, you should be doing things that are rad, that are awesome, that are exciting for you. So the reason that we bifurcate those two things is just to make sure people understand you don't want to pursue something that is only fun for you, that only serves you, only because the physics of being human, we are a social creature. You have hard wiring that is compelling you to do things that also serve the group. And that if you don't do that, you will have a sense of emptiness, which is why, man, let me tell you, if you're depressed, one of the fastest ways to get out of depression is to go serve other people. Go to a soup kitchen, man. And it isn't just that you're seeing people that have it worse off than you. That's not an interesting, I've never said this out loud. It's not an interesting way to pursue the world, right? Oh, other people have it worse than me. That's not going to help you. What will help you is going and just all of a sudden, when you are helping someone else, that natural part of your psychological makeup is going to make you feel good. It is nature using neurochemistry to reward behavior that is more likely to keep you alive. By serving the group, you are more likely to reap the protection of the group. So you just have this underpinning in your psychology to get a positive neural feedback when you help people. It is not a mechanism of going, oh my God, people have it worse than me. It might give you like a little thing to jot down in your gratitude journal, but the reality is everyone knows that people have it worse than them. And that still doesn't help, right? You've got billionaires committing suicide. Now they know that people have it worse than them, but that's nothing in the face of the just raw neurochemistry. So when you're building this stuff out, you want to make sure that you have identified what you're going to invest in as your meaning and purpose, but you also, to reap the benefits of that neurochemistry, you want to make sure that it is something that serves not only yourself, but other people. Make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Word. Now, by the way, dear teammates, oftentimes I will give somebody an answer, and I am in no way, shape, or form saying that Sarah did this. I'm just, it reminded me of it. I will give people an answer that they quietly, it doesn't actually answer their question. And they will give that feedback later, but they don't say it in the moment. I love when people push me. If an answer I give you think is bullshit, it didn't help, or it just, that sort of addresses what I'm saying, but not really, go ahead and hit me with it, because I'm happy, one, to either find out that I'm wrong, or two, to have an opportunity to answer the thing that's really bothering you. So never, ever be afraid to push back. All right. Sneha Gannon. Is there a point where workaholism takes over your life? In my case, I find myself having a to-do list so long that I just cram so much into every day that I lose my personality and time for myself. How do you find that balance? Okay, so the optimal strategy is to make sure that the thing that you're doing for work is also some percentage, some hopefully large percentage, is something that you would do whether it was for work or not, that you just absolutely love doing. Okay, so I will use my own life as an example. I'm trying to build the next Disney. Okay, I have all my reasons around empowerment and mindset and all that, but just know I'm trying to build the next Disney. So I'm trying to create TV shows, films, just think of Disney and all the things that they do, minus the theme parks. As of right now, I have no strategy, no interest in building theme parks. Check back in. Maybe things will change, but as of right now, not at all. So telling those stories, using narrative, that's a big thing for me. So on the weekends, I don't have to work. So my work life is split up. It's about 60% what I'll call overhead, doing things that I only do for the health of the business. And 40% is stuff that I would do whether it was good for the business or not. It's just stuff I love doing. So on the weekends, I work, but I allow myself, for the most part, to only do things that fall into the 40%. So the harder I go working and investing in this thing that I'm trying to build, I'm actually spending time. Like this weekend, I spent hours and hours and hours, basically a full working day. For most people, as you guys know, I wake up obscenely early. So for me, it doesn't feel like a full working day, but I'll put 6 to 8 hours in on just creating the worlds of the stories that I'm trying to hand off to the writers. So I'm spending a lot of time, or maybe I'm reading something, a manga or manhwa, or like this weekend, I watched Akira, which is breathtaking. It's so good. And for those inclined, read the manga first. It makes the movie that much better. But I'm doing those things. So I'm workaholism. I'm all in. I'm going crazy. But at the same time, I'm feeding my sense of self. I'm doing things that I would want to do. Okay, so that's the ideal way, that there is such a blend of the things that you love and what you do that the two really just begin to intermingle. If you don't have that, and the harder you go and working harder and chasing your goals, that it's actually beginning to drain a bit of your energy, now you're going to need to carve time periods out. So in the early part of my career, where I was working obscene amounts of hours, but in a job that I did not care about, and it was all just about getting rich, that I had to begin creating time for other things, where I said, when I'm working, I'm going to be 100% working. I'm not going to be daydreaming or spacing out. I'm going to be working. But when I'm with my wife, I'm with my wife. I'm not on my phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not doing anything but spending time with my wife. And I built rules around the times. And you have to be good about honoring your commitment to that time, so that you're only doing things that apply to that thing when it's that time. So if it's kids time, man, you're 100% with the kids. Your phone is in another room. You are not checking email. And I will do things like repeat. My only job right now, because my mind, of course, will begin to wander. My only job right now is to spend time with my kids, spend time with my wife, work on my business, whatever the thing is that you're working on in that time. So once again, rules are going to come to our aid, and rules are something that I don't think people use nearly enough. So it's balanced through the extremes. When I'm working, I'm working. And when I'm playing, I'm playing. Blurta Kuka. Hi, Tom. Greetings from London. What is up, London? Everyone knows my feelings on London. It gave me my wife so many wonderful things. I love London the most. All right, my question. How can you determine whether you are giving up on something because it's getting hard or because the goal is just not the right one for you? Okay, this is where all the artistry in the world is going to come in. No one is going to know. So I will say there's a great quote that I saw on Instagram, so I have no idea who came up with this, but don't trust what people say. Don't even necessarily trust what they do, but always, always trust a pattern. That is how I would think about it. You may do something once, no big deal. Maybe do it twice, no big deal. You start quitting on things 3, 4, 5 times, we've got a pattern. It's probably that you just haven't developed the grit enough to see things through. Angela Duckworth covers this in her book, Grit. I highly recommend reading that book. It is absolutely phenomenal, and it will help you understand sort of where that line is. I don't remember exactly what she says about it, but I think it's something along those lines, that you're basically looking for a pattern. And if you find that you love the initial phase of a whole lot of things, but that as things get hard, you don't enjoy it anymore, that's almost certainly a problem. The easy way for me to explain this is for people that have a problem with quote unquote commitment. I actually don't think people have a problem with commitment. What I think they have a problem with is they're essentially addicted to the neurochemical state of that early stage of love. They don't understand or appreciate how to migrate that early drug-like quality that people have. You can put somebody in an fMRI machine, and somebody that's just taken a bump of cocaine from a neurochemistry standpoint looks exactly the same as somebody that's shown a photo of the person that they're in that new early stage of love with. So some people they crave that like crazy sensation, and they may not understand that it is a natural part that's going to migrate to something that's longer-term pair bonding. Now, when you understand that, when you know the beauty of trust and commitment and long-term love and friendship and all the security that comes with that, then you can really not only appreciate it when it comes, but actually look forward to it. And that was something that my wife and I talked a lot about when we were just dating. And I was like, this is insane. And I remember my mom gave me a definition of love that I think is so brilliant. And she said, you know you're in love when you are convinced that no two people have ever felt about each other the way that you feel about your significant other. And I was like, oh my God, that is so true. That is how I feel about Lisa. Nobody has ever experienced this. It was so insane. My every thought was about her. And it was like the gravitational pull of who she was as a human being was so insane. I didn't want to do anything. I would have happily starved to death just to be in her company. And I thought, oh my God, this is crazy. This is exactly what my mother was talking about. Now I get it. But I'd also learned enough about human psychology, evolution, all that to know this is going to migrate. This is going to become a pair bonding neurochemistry. And so we talked about that openly so that when it happened, we got it. And so looking at other people that just hunger for that, the initial phases, like they should be able to recognize that pattern. Okay, I get it. I'm going for this type of neurochemistry. I'm going to have to really understand where this goes, how that becomes magical, so that I'm not trapped by the unconscious notions of like, hey, this isn't as cool as it once was. And go back to that. You have a conscious awareness of what's going on, and developing that awareness will help you navigate the transition. So I will say the same thing is true when you're trying to get better at something, you're trying to build something that you understand, hey, the beginning is going to be fun. It's this new idea. You don't know what the challenges are. You don't know how hard everything is going to be. We used to joke back at Quest that when we were going through the tunnel, if we had understood that the light of the end of the tunnel was actually an oncoming train, we might not have stepped into that tunnel. But thank God we didn't know what we were getting into. Thank God we didn't know how difficult it was going to be. Because once you're in it, then you're sort of pot committed and you keep going. If you have the grit and the fortitude to say, I'm going to develop these skills, I don't covet that sort of just easy excitement from the beginning. I'm going to see this through. The same is true of screenwriting, just to give one more example. It's so much more fun to start an idea than it is to do the hard slog of making an idea good. But there's a saying in screenwriting that you're not a screenwriter, you're a screen rewriter. And if you can get your head around that it's about polishing and trying and failing and learning and getting better, and that's the real juice, and that what you really want is the end product, something that's amazing, that actually functions in the world, then you can navigate the ever-changing waters. How to know if you love yourself. This is going to be interesting. A colleague said you either love yourself or don't. And I know there are moments when I'm proud of myself, but I also, after, for example, getting rejected, feel my self-worth, love crashing. Tips would be much appreciated. Okay. I have no doubt that your coworker is well-intentioned. But the reality is they're either lying to you or they're lying to themselves, because neurochemistry is an ever-fluctuating state. That's just the reality of it. You're going to have ups and downs, oftentimes cycling dozens of times in a single day, going from, oh my God, I'm amazing, to I am just a trash heap. And that is going to cycle. Now, one of the reasons I talk about fulfillment is because fulfillment is sort of that bedrock. It's the thing that is going to even some of that out for you. So if you know that you're working hard for all the things that you have, and you're struggling to get better, and you face challenges, and you've shown yourself over and over and over that you do difficult things, that you're willing to face your inadequacies, all of that, when you encounter an inadequacy and it hurts, you're still going to have, but I know I'm going to face this. And when you have the, but I know I'm going to face this, but I know I'm going to get through this, this too shall pass. When you have that bedrock foundation of fulfillment, which is often born of suffering, it's born of doing the hard thing and getting the self-respect that comes from doing the hard things, even in those moments where you do take that hit and you're like, oh man, like I really thought this project was going to be amazing. I really thought that I had killed it. And that comes crumbling down. It only crumbles down too, but I worked really hard. When you think you've nailed something, you think you've got it, and it's because you thought you were smart and you showed up at the last second and you winged it and you thought, man, this is what I do. This is who I am. I'm good at this shit. And then it fails. And what do you have to fall back on? I'm smart. Then you just go, but I'm not smart. And so now it becomes this endless pit and you just keep falling and falling and falling. And there is no floor. And the floor is that fulfillment. It's that I worked really hard for this. I'm working not only for myself, but other people. So you have this thing, this floor, this foundation that are things that you know about yourself to be true, that stop that fall, which will happen, from being an infinite fall into the abyss.
Hey, Tom, how are you?
What's up, Raphael? How you doing?
Great to see you. Just want to say that before I start with my question, 3 years ago, I found you on YouTube. I was going through a tough period in time where I was alone in the city, had some steps through my career and watching you on YouTube. And I've been following you ever since you opened the Impact Theory University. So I just want to say thank you. I always talk about you and you know, like everybody, like even my friends, like, oh, Tom says this, Rafa's going to do it. So thank you so much.
I'm honored, man. Thank you for being here.
And I think this question, it's going to be really helpful for you. I mean, for me, that you answer it. I'm a person that likes to push himself really hard. And a lot of times my mind just like keeps running and running and running. And it's hard for me to live in the present because I'm doing something and then I'm thinking about other things that I should be doing or I could be doing, right? And this goes when I'm spending time with family, friends, girlfriend. And then I feel that that's keeping me from really feeling fulfilled with what I'm doing. And my question is, so I've been trying to use meditation as a way to kind of like narrow my mind and just be calm, but my mind keeps going. So my first question is if there's anyone that you could recommend for me. And the second one is, how do you calm those, because I know that you're a person that likes to build the next business, right? So how do you calm those thoughts or like work that you need to do when you're like, for example, with your wife, because I know that it's really important for you. So those are my two questions.
Yeah. So the key is that you need to have some sort of what's called a pattern interrupt. So the book I would recommend for you is called Feeling Great by David D. Burns. There's two versions of it. There's Feeling Good and Feeling Great. They're essentially the same book. If you can get your hands on Feeling Great, which is the updated version, I would encourage it, but either one will work. So he talks about the need to check your own thinking, basically, that you need to interrupt your thinking. And it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy is extraordinarily powerful and it works at a mechanistic level. So it's interrupting that thought and it's checking your thoughts for like delusions, basically. So all or nothing thinking. It's, you know, I'm never going to succeed at this, or if I don't do this, then all hope is lost, or it's fortune telling, you know, oh man, that person thinks I'm an idiot. And he goes through I forget how many there are. They're known as cognitive distortions. So do you have cognitive distortions in your thinking? And that's part of what's making them cycle endlessly. And then the other is going back to what I was saying earlier, which is you need rules. So you need rules in your life where it's like, hey, when I'm with my wife, my only job is to be with my wife. So when those ideas pop up, part of why you entertain them is you feel a responsibility to solve the riddle to improve your life or to feel better about yourself. And so you feel like, hey, I need to think this through. I need to worry about this, right? So every human has a worry mechanism. So when you talk about the physics of being human, what are the things the mind is going to do, whether you want it to or not? One of them is worry, right? To think about the future, to control the things you can control, to worry about certain things. And when you get into that pattern in the wrong time and you feel like, no, but I need to do this. I need to think about this. I need to rehearse this. Otherwise, some bad thing is going to befall me. you have to have a way to interrupt that thought pattern. And the thing that I have used is to say, my only job right now is to X. So I developed this because I would have trouble falling back asleep. I'd wake up to pee. I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. So I would tell myself, your only job right now is to sleep, because I would be like, oh man, there's this business problem I got to solve. And then I would be tired. And so I was like, well, this is self-defeating. So I started using that line. The same thing when I'm with my wife. Man, when I'm with my wife, I'm with my wife. And it's like, I want to be engaged with her. So I'll do things like, don't even look away. Like, look at your wife. Engage with her eyes. Do you actually understand what she's saying? If you don't, ask a question. Like, really go in. Be present. Like, do the physiological things. Like, there's this whole concept called blading. If you and I were at a party and I was talking to you like this is blading. So when I find myself, and let's say my wife is talking, and I'm like, hey, this is wife time, I square my shoulders. I know this seems simple and dumb, but it really works. It gives yourself psychological cues. I'm here, I'm locked in. So I'm going to square up. My only job right now is to be with my wife or whatever it is that I'm doing. And I'm really going to engage. I'm going to make sure that I understand her, point of view, her argument, or that I'm reflecting back. If she's being joyful, that I'm reflecting back her joy. I'm embodying it, right? I talk a lot about embodying emotions. So I'm going to embody her joy. I'm going to be there with her. Or if she's in a sorrowful moment, I'm going to be there. I'm going to, that whole idea of holding space, that phrase gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies, but like, I'm going to be there with her, and I'm going to, be in that zone with her. And when you can do that, but then you have to honor when you're at work. It's like, yo, I'm at work, and my job is not to solve my wife's problems right now or my kids' problems. I'm at work. And so because I've shown myself over time that I will do that I will compartmentalize. I'm going to go hard on work when it's work time, and I'm going to be totally present with my wife, my kids, my whatever. When it's that time, then it's like when one starts to intrude over the other, I say, hey, I will give you your time, but your time is not now. And then armed with the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, I think you'll find it much easier.
So it's more about what I'm like understanding is like kind of like willpower at the moment of saying, no, not right now. This is what you need to, this is what you're doing at this moment. Give your 100% attention to this, to your wife or to your job. And then later on, I'll figure out what the other thing is.
Willpower is a tricky beast. So be careful.
Okay. Okay.
Willpower, I'm a huge believer in willpower and that you can build it up and all of that, but there is enough sort of room for error where people will go, oh, I'm tired, I don't have the willpower, or that's fine for people with willpower, but I don't have it. And then they get into a shame spiral about blaming themselves for not having the willpower. So instead of do that, let's use mechanistic things that are more effective. When we have a negative thought, we have a rule that we interrupt that negative thought with something positive. It's just a rule. It's not willpower. It's a rule. So, hey, yep, I have a negative thought. I recognize I have a negative thought. I'm going to interrupt that negative thought. Or, hey, I have a rule. I'm with my wife. I recognize now I'm thinking about work. And so I'm going to trigger something like the statement that my only job right now is to be with my wife. And as simple as that is, triggering that rule set, whether you're tired, whether you're anything, triggering that rule set, regardless of willpower, is going to bring you back into that moment because you've interrupted those thoughts. Word. Where are you? Where in the world?
Croatia.
Okay. Middle of the night. Are we outside?
I'm outside and I'm trying to find the light. Okay. This is somewhat good.
There we go.
Yeah, I have limited time, but this is, I don't know how rare opportunity. Thank you for everything. By the way, my name is Igor. I didn't introduce myself. Okay, so my question for you is, how do you prioritize? Okay, what is your number one priority? You said it's Lisa, but do you put yourself above her? Because recently, like yesterday, a girl rejected me, and I put my value system that when I get married, the number one priority will be my wife. And now I'm rethinking that. So if you have any tips based on that, or if you can share like how do you approach prioritizing your value system, that would be great.
Man, what a cool question. Thank you for this. So the real answer is I would die for my wife. So there, in some aspects, yes, she is a value that is higher than myself. But also there are times where I'm like, I recognize, I'll give a very concrete example. So my wife and I have a rule, which is if you say something is important, then the other person is going to drop whatever they are doing and they are going to address that thing. Now, my wife and I have had that rule for 20 years, and only one time has she said, this is important to me. And I said the exact opposite thing is important to me. So I had a business trip that I was like, I have to go on this business trip. I said I would do it. I'm going to do it. And my wife said, it is important to me that you not go on that business trip. And I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? I would die for this woman. And here she is asking me to not go on this business trip, but I'm going on this fucking business trip. So it is really interesting because I'm not joking when I say that I would die for my wife. May it never come to that, by the way. But I legitimately, I would never be able to look myself in the face if it came down to that and I didn't do that. So I know that I would do that. And yet at the same time, here is a value that she has. It's colliding with a value that I have. And I did choose myself in that moment. So now it becomes, man, can you navigate those waters of figuring out when, like, this thing that she wants, is it more or less important than this thing that I want? And this is why, boys and girls, it is what Lisa and I call independently codependent. I don't even know who I am without my wife. Legitimately, we got together when I was so young. I was 24 when I met her, 26 when we got married. So it's like my brain wasn't even done developing when I got with this girl. So literally, she has shaped who I am more profoundly than any human being. Maybe even like I will say that if you're 50% genetics and 50% malleable, my parents have contributed 50%. My wife has contributed basically the other 50%. So like legitimately, I don't know who I am without her. And I actually don't care who I am without her. But at the same time, I have not lost my identity, my sense of self, who I am. I'm a separate person. If my wife is acting a fool, I'm going to say, you're acting a fool. What the fuck are you doing? I'm not just going to side with my wife because she's my wife. I'm going to be like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I am goal oriented. What is our goal? Let's work backwards. We're trying to achieve this. The thing that you were doing does not make sense. So this is where people have got to get to the point where being in a relationship only makes sense if that person makes you feel better about who you are. They are lifting you up. Your life is better because of your involvement with them, your connection with them. And I've told my wife, hey, homie, just so you know, I have this switch in my head. If you ever did anything to cross one of my lines, the uncrossable lines, I will flip a switch. I won't even fucking think about you. Done. I'm not going to be the person that's lamenting you and that will chase you down and be like, oh God. No, I will click done. Now, having said that, the amount of things that I will do for her and invest in her and all of that, I've already covered all the way to dying for that woman. But it isn't like a blind, I would die for this person. It is not unconditional love. So never lose yourself, even when you've given yourself to someone. You want to be independently codependent. The joy is the enmeshing of being with that person. But we're fucking human. You never have to lose sight of yourself. Never have to lose sight of your goals. You never have to lose sight of what you want. And that's hard, man. That is hard because we love binary shit. To like, it's I'm with this person or I'm not. It's all about them. I would die for them or it's not. And look, we all know somebody who loses themselves when they get into a relationship. Don't be that person, right? You should be somebody new. You should be somebody better when you're with that person, but you shouldn't lose who you are as an individual being. And like I said, the easy way to check that is if your partner is out of their mind, are you going to tell him? You're out of your mind. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And if you can be at that place where you can keep a sense of your own identity, you will be just fine. So keep that identity. And remember, people want to be with somebody who's strong, man. They want to be like, you need to be who you are. And when they see that, like you're on your own path. Like Lisa could ask me all day to stop being hardcore. And I told her when we got together, you can ask me to give up anything for you, anything. This obviously after we were married. You can ask me to give up anything for you and I'd probably do it. But you ever ask me to give up my ambition, get out, because that is a fundamental part of who I am. Know who you are. Don't bullshit it. I know Amy is desperately trying to get me off this to wrap this shit up because I'm over time. But let me tell you, I'm psychotic about this whole notion. Like I told Lisa early in the relationship, I will always find other people attractive. I will want to sleep with other people, but I won't. And that's commitment. But if you think that like I live in some weird delusional world where because I've fallen in love with you, I only have eyes for you, like that's bullshit. It's not true to the human experience. I know you're going to find other people attractive. You can want to sleep with other people. I'm not weirded out about that. I'm just saying, don't. We're committed. We're in a relationship. Anyway, now this is becoming a relationship theory episode. I love this shit. It is so important. Having good relationships, whether friends or marriage or whatever, is so critical. Igor, thank you for your question. Thank you. It's the middle of the night where you are. Thank you for being a part of this community. Super cool to meet you. Hopefully it won't be the last time. Everybody, thank you for joining me. And I see a bunch of questions coming about relationships. So I will just tell you that Lisa and I have actually launched Relationship Theory as a channel. So if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, go subscribe on YouTube to Relationship Theory. We have a whole show about this that we just launched. So go check it out. All right, everybody. As always, thank you. Thank you for the questions. I'm honored. You guys are amazing. We'll talk to you soon. Until next time, be legendary. Take care.